Welcome to the ReGen Brands Podcast, the place for brands, retailers, investors, and other food system stakeholders to learn about the consumer brands supporting regenerative agriculture and how they're changing the world. I'm your host, AC. Thanks for tuning in. Now let's get into today's conversation. On this episode, we sit down with Keith Bearden, CEO of Alter Eco, to unpack one of the most turbulent years in chocolate's history. We dig into why cacao prices have more than tripled over the past 2 years and how a new 39% Swiss import tariff is disrupting their business in ways that we've never seen before. Keith shares how Alter Eco is helping farmers transition to dynamic agroforestry systems across Latin America, why regenerative certification doesn't always pencil out, and what needs to happen to unify the movement so consumers truly understand ReGen's value. Let's go. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the ReGen Brands Podcast. Very excited today to have my friend Keith from Alter Eco joining us. So welcome, Keith.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Good to have you, man. We were commiserating in the prep portion before we hit record that we have quite a few not so fun maybe topics for Keith to shed some light on. So especially grateful for him to kind of spend some time with us as cacao prices and tariffs and many things affect his business. So just an upfront, piece of gratitude for you joining us to break all that down, Keith. But we also have a lot of fun and exciting things to talk about as well. But before we do any of that, for those that maybe aren't familiar with Alter Eco, which I'm sure is not many folks, will you just share a little bit of background on the brand? What do y'all produce and where can people find your products today?
Yeah, happy to do that. So Alter Eco's been around for a little more than 20 years now. And the brand was founded with the foundational elements of restoring ecosystems, improving livelihoods, and reducing waste, hence the name Alter Eco.
Yeah.
We're known for our chocolate. We produce some of the best chocolate in the world, and I would challenge anybody to try it and say otherwise. We also produce a wonderful line of granola, and we have some legacy products that are quinoa. They've been around since the beginning. Not a lot of differentiation other than, we support some local farmers with our quinoa products coming out of Latin America. So the brand is really focused on helping to change the ecosystem, if you will. And we'll get into that when we talk more about regenerative. But we're one of the top chocolate brands in the natural channel. So you can find us at Whole Foods, Sprouts, Natural Grocers, all the independent retailers. But we're making a lot of headway into the conventional market these past couple of years. And of course, you can find us online at alterecofoods.com and on Amazon.
Nice. Yeah, my personal Alter Eco addiction is the caramel skew chocolate bar, and gotta buy it, take it home, freeze it for about an hour, get it nice and cold and almost like frozen. And that's my number one. What's your favorite Alter Eco product?
I really gravitate toward the darker. So probably Classic Blackout is my go-to.
Yeah.
But if I have truffles sitting around, they're really hard to resist.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, you mentioned the brand's been around for almost 20 years or 20 years. I come to really the conclusion that Alter Eco has been a leader in a lot of these topics for a really long time. Maybe even when they started with some of the work, it wasn't called what it's called today, or the general narrative around it has shifted, but really doing good for people and planet has been at the core of the brand since the very beginning, like you mentioned. Can you, Keith, just bring people up to speed on maybe some of the original origins of the brand and also when you got involved and in what capacity you're involved today so they know kind of what perspective you're bringing to the conversation?
Yeah, well, I have to give credit to the guys that founded the company. Edward and Matthew, they were pioneers. I mean, going back to 2004 and talking about regenerative agriculture, or you're right, the term wasn't even there then. It was like, how do we restore these ecosystems that have been clear cut and they're not helping the planet? And so they started out with kind of a mission to focus on helping the farmers, but then at the same time, how can we help restore the planet from a climate perspective primarily is where they were focused. So if we plant bigger trees and we have timber trees and plantains and bananas and coconut trees, they're going to provide shade for the cacao plants. They're going to consume carbon from the atmosphere. Their roots are going to be deeper. So they're in times of drought, they're going to suck up more groundwater. And then all their foliage is going to create more organic matter into the soil, and it just helps the nutrients in the soil. So this whole concept, and they referred to it, and we still do today, as dynamic agroforestry,
Yeah.
not regenerative farming. It's what existed in nature, and so now we're trying to put that nature back in place.
Yeah.
And so they led the company up through 2017. And like many natural foods companies, and especially impact-driven companies, they had to go out and raise capital to grow. And in 2014, there was a private equity group out of San Francisco called Next World that invested in the company. And then in 2017, Next World acquired Alter Eco.
Okay.
And in 2018, I became an advisor to Next World, not specifically related to Alter Eco, but in general around their whole portfolio.
Okay.
And they're a very mission-driven private equity group. They invest in companies that are mission-driven, primarily climate and environmental impact-driven. And so Alter Eco was a perfect fit for them. And so in 2019, they asked me to join the board of Alter Eco, and I was on the board for a few years. And then, like all private equity, they had the asset for quite some time. So in 2023, they decided they were going to sell it and reinvest the money in additional companies to help them grow. And I raised my hand and said, I really like this company. I'd like to buy it. And so we negotiated for a while, agreed on a price, and then I said, okay, now I got to go find some money.
Yeah.
And so I found some investors, and in December of 2023, we acquired the company.
Nice. It's never a bad deal when you acquire a business that comes with a lifetime supply of truffles. That's
Well,
always
this
a
is true.
nice perk.
This is true. This is true.
Yeah.
And I took over as the CEO at the end of 23 when we did the acquisition, and I've been
Okay.
running the company since then.
Yeah. And I mean, what a time to buy one of the leading natural chocolate brands. We've had cacao prices go, 100x or something insane
Yeah.
in 2024?
Yeah, more than that. I had a friend of mine sent me a meme at the end of 2024, and it was a picture of a cacao pod and a picture of Bitcoin, and he said, "Cacao outperformed Bitcoin last year." Great.
Yeah.
Just what I needed to hear. But when we bought the company, we closed on the deal December 22nd, 2023.
Okay.
Cacao prices were $3,800 a ton. Had my first board meeting in April after we closed first quarter. Cacao prices were $12,800 a ton.
Wow.
4x almost.
Wow.
And of course, my investors said, did we do the right thing?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I said, hey, we'll make it through. And all things that go up eventually come back down. And they have come down some. I mean, they're trading now somewhere around between 8 and 9,000. And it's really traders and speculators that are causing such volatility in the market today. Up to that point, though, what caused the volatility was yield. And so, to around our discussion around regenerative farming, 60% of the world's cacao comes from Africa.
Right.
Predominantly Western Cape of Africa, Ivory Coast, and Ghana. Most of those plantations were clear-cut monocrop plantations and have been that way for 60, 70, 80 years. We don't talk a lot. We don't call it global warming anymore. We call it climate change now.
Yeah.
But that climate change specifically over the last 4 or 5 years, has caused significant declines in yield,
Mm,
especially out of Africa. And so
mm,
you've had extreme seasons of drought, you've had extreme seasons of rain, you've had a lot of extreme heat, and cacao doesn't respond well to any of that.
right.
And so there's been disease because of too much rain. There's been lack of yield because of too little rain. And so in the 22-23 season, the yield was down about 10 or 12%. But remember, they produce 60% of the world's supply. In 23-24, the yield was down 30%. And so now you're
Oof.
talking about a 20% decline in the world's yield.
Right, right.
And once prices started climbing,
Ooh.
then speculators jumped in and
And
started buying futures and buying everything they could.
can you break that down, Keith, for somebody like me that doesn't live in that commodities world, specifically with like something like cacao? So
Mhm,
I think it's easy for most people to understand what you just unpacked from a climate change, weather related kind of yield reduction, and how like, hey, just basic supply demand that's going to drive up price. But
mhm,
how have some of the financial gaming, air quotes, right, the
mhm,
speculator trader influence,
mhm.
how has that affected price? Like how does that work? Can you give us a layman's breakdown on that?
Yeah, yeah. So cacao's traded on two commodity exchanges in the world, one in London, one in New York.
Okay.
Now, and it's traded just like a stock or like oil or like
Yeah.
citrus or coffee or anything is traded on a commodity exchange. Now, having said that, big players don't spot buy. We don't
Mm,
spot buy.
mhm.
Even we don't spot buy unless we run out of stock or we grow too fast, which
Right.
in 2024 we grew faster than we forecasted. So we had to spot buy some at the end of the year, which was really painful.
Yeah.
Um, but the big players like Hershey's, Mondelez, Nestle, Mars, they go in and they negotiate with the farmers and they pre-finance them in some cases and they commit to the entire crop. But when the prices start going up, you have some of these farmers that'll say, "Oh, I know I promised you 100 tons, but I only have 70." And they'll take that other 30 tons and they'll sell it on the open market. And cacao's not only used in producing chocolate,
Right.
it's used in all kinds of baking products, it's used in all kinds of flavors and fragrance creations. I mean, it's used in thousands and thousands of applications.
Yeah.
And so and most of those players that aren't chocolate producers, they're buying from traders. You
Mm,
know, the Cargills of the world or the SunOptas of the world or the Troddens of the world that are buying cacao,
right.
producing cacao powder, cocoa butter, cocoa liquor, and they're selling to these smaller producers a ton at a time or 2 tons at a time. And, where we buy 30, 40 tons at a time.
Mhm,
That's a different scenario, and we negotiate directly with the co-ops and with the farmers and lock in pricing.
mhm.
And like I said, unless we outgrow what we locked in, we're buying at not at that spot price.
Right.
But having said that, I can't expect my farmers to sell to me for less than they can go sell on the spot market.
Yeah.
That's not
Right.
fair to them. And
Right.
part of our ethos is improving their livelihood.
Mhm.
So everybody's price went up. I
Yeah.
mean, the only good news about that is that all chocolate producers are playing by the same rules.
Mm. You you mentioned to me, I think it's like 16,000 farmers total, maybe not all cacao farmers that y'all work
Mhm.
with last time we chatted.
That's a rough number. I mean, it fluctuates from year to year, but it's between 15 and 20,000 that we
Yeah.
work with. And those are predominantly we only buy from Latin America. We don't buy anything out of
I was
Africa.
I was just gonna ask, what are all the geographies just for cacao that you're sourcing from?
Yeah, we source out of Latin America because that's where most of the organic cacao comes from.
Okay.
Most of it coming out of Africa is not certified organic.
Mhm,
It's conventional products and goes into most of the conventional manufacturers.
mhm.
We source primarily from Ecuador, Dominican Republic, Peru, So those are the three bigger growing regions for organic cacao.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. And there's some cool stuff y'all are doing on the ReGen side. Lots of cool stuff. And selfishly, the ReGen report, the impact sustainability report that y'all published was very easy for a podcast host to make good questions from and to make a little outline from. But yeah, let's go there and talk about what you're actually doing on the land. You mentioned this term, dynamic agroforestry. Love that term.
Hmm.
And we've definitely talked to many brands that support these dynamic, regenerative, biodiverse agroforestry systems in Latin America. And really, in so many ways, it's a return to what the indigenous peoples or previous generations of farmers, or even some people have always practiced in those areas. And
Hmm.
it's, like you said, what shows up in nature. Um, and, I'd love for you to just kind of maybe start with, can you compare what a alter eco farm might look like that y'all source from versus like just a conventional monocrop cacao plantation?
Oh yeah, ours looks like a jungle.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, literally. If you're looking at it from a satellite view perspective,
Yeah.
you're not going to see cacao plants at all. You're going to see trees. You're going to see timber trees. You're going to see it depends on the region. Certain regions grow plantains much better than they do coconuts, for example, and other regions will grow coconuts better. And so we try to work with the local people to understand A, what's going to grow the best there,
Hmm.
B, what's going to give them an additional cash crop, because
Right.
remember, we're trying to improve their livelihood. So if we go in and they've been monocropping cacao for however long, we're actually going to take out some cacao plants,
Mm. Yeah.
and that's going to reduce their income, you know, but we're going to put in coconut or banana or plantain or limes or avocado bushes, and whatever grows well in that region. And over a period of 3 to 4 years, those plants are going to start to produce, and then it's going to give them a more diversified income. And during that time frame where we're asking them to make that transition or supporting them in making that transition, we're helping them financially to bridge that gap. We're also providing education through some of our partners down there and our partner in Switzerland. And then we're also providing the plants. We're working on a project right now in Dominican Republic where
Mm-hmm.
we're helping farmers plant coconut trees. Coconuts are a the coconuts are in big demand in Dominican Republic, um, for a lot of different reasons, um, and but they grow really well there, but a lot of the farmers have never had coconut trees,
Hmm.
and it's not been something that they've really cultivated, and so they're importing a lot of coconuts from Vietnam, from Indonesia, and things like that. And so by helping them plant coconut trees in that region, it does a number of things. One, it gives them another income source. Number two, once those trees grow up, coconut trees are huge and provide
Yeah.
fabulous shade for cacao plants.
Yeah.
Third, it reduces emissions because they don't have to import so much.
Mm.
And it pulls more carbon from the air. So it's a really win-win project. We're pretty excited about that one.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting. We've seen the theme now after so many of these podcast episodes where, I think a question we used to ask everybody is like, what are the key reasons or what are the key challenges for helping a farmer transition? And it seems like the three ways that you are supporting seems to be the three that always rise to the top as the answer to
Mhm,
that question, right? So it's the direct financial support to actually make the changes that need to happen. It's the agronomic support to know how the hell to do the things that you're asking them to do or that they want to do
right.
but maybe don't know how. And interesting, it's like the third one is always that propagation that you mentioned that y'all are doing, which the
Mhm,
actual like execution of enabling the agronomics, or it's some sort of something to do with the actual like most upstream variable for getting plants in the ground and actually getting stuff growing in a different way.
mhm.
Um, the financial incentives, does that vary based on how y'all are supporting people? Is it just a price increase for the offtake? Is it like actually purchasing some of those initial plant species that they're now replanting? Like what does that piece look like?
So It's a number of different things, and it depends on the situation.
Yeah.
We obviously we don't buy directly from 16,000 farmers.
Yes.
That would be impossible.
Right.
So we work with the co-ops, and so there are co-ops in specific regions, and the co-ops have a pretty good reach. I think we work with 3 specific co-ops in Ecuador, and about 40 to 50% of our cacao beans come from Ecuador.
Okay.
And so they're covering a lot of territory.
Yeah.
And so we will work with them to make sure that we may actually provide additional revenue for the cacao beans. But one of the
Mhm.
things we do with our Swiss partners, we pre-finance everything. So
Mm.
when we commit to a crop, we
Mhm.
buy the whole crop and we pay for it up front before it's ever even harvested. And then in the case of this project in Dominican Republic, we actually bought all the coconut trees
Wow.
and shipped them down there, you know.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
we're investing quite significantly in the farmers. And the interesting thing about that is that these farmers are so loyal and committed to us, you
Mhm.
know, because of what we're doing with them. And when I go down there, I mean, it's such a rewarding experience because
I
they're
bet.
so proud of this transformation.
Yeah.
And they want to show you. I mean, they had a table set up on one of our farmers in Ecuador, and it had 9 different products on it that they were
Wow.
selling now.
Wow.
And so it was amazing. There was papayas, there was avocados, there was limes, there was plantains, there was baby bananas. And if you've never had an organic
Yeah.
baby banana, oh
Yeah.
my God, they're so good.
Yeah.
You know. And of course cacao was front and center. That was still their main cash crop. But
Mhm.
all these others contribute as well.
Mhm. I love the like how kind of interrelated the co-op organizational structure for most of these farmers is related to this biodiversity slash cash crop income diversity play.
Mhm.
Because I think as Americans, that's not our prototypical vision of a farmer. Like a farmer here
No.
kind of is an very independent person that usually produces one thing, and like that's kind of status quo. And
Yeah.
in a lot of these global South areas, it's like the complete opposite paradigm for
Mhm.
success. Um,
Mhm.
and it, I'm sure, makes it a lot more efficient and centralized to be able to work organizationally between brand Alter Eco, Swiss chocolate manufacturer, and the various co-ops. And that can be, I think, power that's wielded in a negative way a lot of times, but it's really cool to see it wielded for positive gain and
Yeah.
to really take
Yeah.
care of these farmers and work with them in this capacity. And there's for us to make this agricultural thing work that we're trying to make work, there's got to be a lot more of that without losing the scale and the efficiency that makes it actually pencil out from a numbers perspective.
Right. Well, and we also engage with consultants in this space too, because
Hmm.
we don't claim to have all the knowledge, nor does our Swiss partner,
Yeah.
and so we work with some agro consultants
Hmm.
specifically in Ecuador and Dominican Republic. And it was interesting. The last time I was in Ecuador 5 or 6 months ago, we they were demonstrating how groundwater is retained with the different plants. And so they had these
Yeah.
little boxes set up, and they had the roots of these plants embedded in one. And
Yeah.
then the other one, they just had the cacao roots and nothing else. And
Yeah.
they just poured water in them, and you could see the water just come right out of the one with nothing but cacao plants in it. And the other one had very little water dripping out of it.
Hmm.
And a bunch of farmers were standing there watching this, and they're like, "Oh, okay," you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's I feel like that's something very common now in the regen space is people doing those demonstrations, and it
mhm,
really is super influential to see whether you're a consumer, farmer, brand operator, whoever, cuz many times when you're looking at a regenerative farm versus a conventional farm above ground level, you can see the difference, right?
mhm,
But you maybe can't visually get the full understanding of like why we're investing in soil health and soil function, and nothing tells the story better than that. So I love that.
yeah,
That's really cool. Um, so mainly sourcing from Latin America. majority or a large portion coming from Ecuador, working with the various co-ops, doing that direct project with the group in the DR. I want to say, I'm trying to look at my notes here. The impact report said the transition efforts specifically with farmers that had not really engaged in regenerative practices to date you guys have worked with 573 farmers and it's affected almost 2,000 acres. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to say
Yep.
that there might have been some numbers for the DR project, but I didn't write those down, or I need to pull them back up. But yeah, super cool to see that type of impact that y'all are able to have there.
Yeah. I mean, the average size farm down there is about 12 acres.
Right. Right.
So it's not like we're working with farmers that are farming thousands and thousands of acres.
Yeah.
Um, Having said that, we do things that are regeneratively focused
Mm-hmm.
that don't directly impact our supply chain.
Mm-hmm.
We partnered with Kiss the Ground to
Mm-hmm.
convert 1,000 acres in the United States. That has nothing to do with us, but we believe in the movement.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, we try to make sure we walk the talk.
Yeah, and I think the other two stats that stood out to me there were 75% of the cacao beans y'all currently source are from those dynamic agroforestry systems. So this
Hmm.
is the vast majority of your supply. And you've committed to basically sourcing 100% of the cacao and the oats in your supply chain from farms that have regenerative practice adoption / application.
Yep.
And I'm pretty sure that's by and large, way far and away, your two most important ingredients for the business, right?
Oh, for sure. Well, cane sugar is another one, but it's
Yeah.
already regenerative.
Yeah. There you go.
The farmers we work with in Paraguay are actually ReGen certified.
Yeah.
So,
How Go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, I mean, our goal is 100%.
Mhm.
Um, we're making progress every year. It's attainable,
Yeah.
um, but it's going to take time to get there. You know.
Yeah, and you and I think, had an interesting conversation, and maybe we can move to some of the commercial piece here, which is like, it's it's not always the easiest thing in the world to get to an identity preserved product with an on-pack claim when you have the breadth, depth, and diversity of sourcing partners that you all have, and a lot of the multi-ingredient SKUs that you all
Mhm.
have.
Right.
So I'd love to hear you talk about how you have thought about that as you've kind of evaluated the product portfolio and maybe potential innovation opportunities from an alter eco perspective, but also like, hey, what's going on with this regenerative thing as it comes to like consumer awareness, claims
Mhm.
adoption, et cetera? How are y'all thinking about the fact that you're very invested in doing this work, but you haven't really produced a SKU with an on-pack claim, but maybe you will, maybe you won't? Like, break that down for us.
Yeah, that's a really challenging and interesting topic.
Yeah.
The consumers, I think. Well, let me paraphrase or articulate. The consumers in Whole Foods, I think they understand what regenerative means.
Right.
The consumers in Sprouts, they understand what regenerative means.
Hmm.
The consumer in Kroger's,
Right.
not so sure.
Right.
Consumer in Walmart, not so sure.
Hmm.
I think the transparency and focus on sustainability is
Hmm.
something that resonates with the Gen Zs, the Gen Alphas, even the millennials more so than my generation.
Yeah.
Um, I had an interesting conversation with a guy from Nielsen who does all of the market data collection and whatnot,
Hmm.
and he described what he called the say-do gap. He
Mm.
said the
Yeah.
boomers said they wanted to do things the right way and they wanted to be healthy, but they kind of did this over here. And he said the millennials, the gap got a little smaller.
Mhm.
And with the Gen Zs, it got even smaller. And he said with the Gen Alphas, there's no gap. If they
Yeah.
say they're going to do it, they do it.
Mhm.
And he said, but they don't necessarily understand the impact
Mm.
of regenerative farming, emissions management, what it's doing for us. But they just say, oh, well, we should all be doing the right thing.
Mhm.
And they look for brands that are doing that. And again, that transparency and sustainability messaging is important. I'm not sure the consumers actually understand it at this point, and
Mhm.
they definitely don't understand what it takes to get there.
Right. Right.
Um, as far as the certifications go, I have a lot of mixed feelings about that.
Yeah.
We're organic, we're fair for life, we're helping these farmers make this transition, and I can show my receipts. That's
Right.
what my marketing team tells me all the time. We got to show our receipts. And the way we measure this
Mhm.
is, I mentioned earlier, you can, if you're looking at satellite imagery, you can tell ours look like a jungle. Well,
Yeah.
that's how we measure it. I can't go out and measure all 16,000 farms. So we know the regions that the co-ops are buying from and where we're buying from, and so we look at those, and you can easily see that one's clear cut.
Mhm.
And with geospatial technology today, you can measure how many acres that is
Mhm.
very easily.
Mhm.
That's the way we do it. So I don't I don't have the time or the money to
Yeah.
support going out and testing all these farms.
Mhm.
Am I improving the soil health by introducing additional organic matter? Absolutely, I am.
Mhm.
And I don't have any issue at all with the certifying bodies going and randomly testing 2 or 3 farms in one region and 2 or 3 farms in another region.
Right.
But to tell me that they have to test all 16,000 farms
Yeah.
before they can give us the symbol for certification, I can't support that.
Yeah. Yeah, especially because we don't have the data that shows that it resonates enough with the consumer to be worth that investment also. So,
No,
it's great
no, we
that
don't.
yeah.
I mean, they're saying, studies are saying that regenerative brands can charge more,
Mhm.
that the average regen brand compared to a non-regen brand can typically get 8 to 12% more.
Mhm.
That's not a drop in the bucket compared to what it would cost to go through that certification.
Yeah.
And
And I'm
I've talked to these guys. I've talked to Rock, I've talked to Regenified, I've talked to all of them and say, Soil Alliance, and I'm like, "Work with me here. Come down to Ecuador. I'm happy for you to come down and check out some of our farms. I'm happy for you to go to the DR and check out some of our farms. But I can't afford to pay for you to go test them all.
Mhm.
And there's no value in that."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and hopefully we can find an answer there, right? Because I think there's there's a very clear paradigm in CPG that the easiest mechanism is like third party validation of claims.
Mhm.
We feel like people should still be able to first party validate and maybe present that to a third party. Shouldn't have to always pay for it. Shouldn't have
Right.
to fit into some super defined box by people in the United States when we're working with indigenous and non global North farming systems. So
Mhm.
we definitely think absolute dogma and rigidity is not the answer there. And we also think there's like real value in like third party validation and all the thing that comes with that.
For
But
sure.
it's got to
It's
make
gotta be
sense.
a hybrid. It's gotta be a hybrid. And, at the same time, I mean, we're going through all of the other
Hmm.
validations and certifications. And so how can you harmonize some of those across different platforms? Like I said, we're
Right.
organic, we're fair for life. We're B Corp certified. We've been B Corp certified since 2009. We were
Wow.
one of the first companies in the United States to be B Corp certified. There's a lot that goes into that. Go through a B Corp certification audit.
Yeah.
You'll understand how much goes into that. And then we've got the consultants on the ground too, and they're certified in what they do. And so there's so many different checks and balances here that if we can harmonize across these things, it supports the movement. And
Hmm.
and we, these certifications, we put the onus back on the farmer.
Hmm.
And that just adds cost,
Right.
you know. So
Yeah. Yeah, there definitely we need to find some sort of transformative way to stop charging all the good actors more to prove that they're
mhm.
good instead of like letting
Right.
the bad actors like be cheap and worse. But as a society, we haven't quite cracked the code on that one yet.
Not yet. Not yet.
Um, you said something that I
I
found very interesting. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, I will say, the retailers recognize it,
Yeah.
I was at a conference last year, and the senior vice president for grocery at Whole Foods was
Mm,
talking about their commitment to regenerative,
mhm,
and she was calling out one of their farmers in Mexico that produces mangoes, and their farm is regenerative certified, has the rock symbol on it. And she's like, and if you guys haven't tried this, it's really, really good. She paused for a minute, and I had given a presentation earlier in the day. She
yeah.
paused for a minute and she said, okay, it's not as good as Keith's chocolate, but it's really good.
Yeah. The there's something related to this, like, building consumer awareness and demand, conversation specifically to Alter Eco that really caught my attention when you and I spoke last time, which
Mhm.
was since you've taken over the company, you've made more prominent this Swiss manufacturing, and that seems to be resonating with consumers. I would love to
Yeah.
hear the story behind that and what you're seeing there, and, like, I'm asking the question so we can relate it to how can we make something like Swiss manufactured chocolate? How can we make ReGen, as important to a consumer as maybe what that has been for y'all? So I'd love to hear you talk about that.
Yeah. So the way that all came about was mid last year, I brought in a new chief marketing officer,
Hmm.
and she's fabulous. I love her to death. And
Yeah.
she asked me to describe Alter Eco in one word.
Mm.
When I was interviewing her, she's interviewing me. She's like, so describe Alter Eco for me in one word.
Hmm.
And I sat there for a minute and I'm like, organic. And she, no, 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 no. You lost me. I said, well, sustainable. No. Bridget, no. She's like, why do I buy chocolate? I
Mm.
said, well, because it's good. It's delicious. She's like, okay, okay. Tell me it's delicious. And then she said, but why is it delicious? I said,
Mm.
well, because it's manufactured in Switzerland and the Swiss have been making premium chocolates for 450 years. They're the best in the world at it. She's like, okay, now you got me.
Yeah.
Now I want to buy it. I want to try it. She
Hmm.
said, and now that you've got me, you can tell me all the other good things you do too.
Hmm. Right.
She said, but I'm not going to buy a chocolate bar because you bought regenerative cacao beans.
Hmm.
That's not why I buy chocolate.
Hmm.
I buy chocolate to indulge myself.
Hmm.
But if I know that that indulgence comes along with helping improve the planet, oh, well, that's a win-win. So, like I said, she's brilliant. She,
Yeah.
she, we grew over 20% last year.
Nice.
And a lot of that growth came in the second half of the year. And it was mid-year when I brought in
Mm.
our marketing director and our new PR team.
Hmm.
And I I can't attribute the growth to anything else.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't introduce any new products. We didn't, we did earlier this year,
Hmm.
but I mean, last year they transformed the brand messaging. And she said, Alter Eco's always been such a serious brand. You guys are so
Mm.
serious about everything you do. And she
Hmm.
said, and it's a serious topic. Don't get me wrong. I
Yeah.
understand the weight and the magnitude of what you're trying to do.
Hmm.
But people buy chocolate because they want to indulge themselves.
Yeah.
Get that message out there first, then tell them about all the good things we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. There's an interesting um, bridge, I think, overall in regen marketing messaging and in kind of the movement and the storytelling of it, where we are very much, I think, still stuck in the activist rebel paradigm. And, like, I
Hmm.
very much came to the space being one of those individuals myself, so I can deeply resonate with it. Um, but I don't know if you get to enough of the adoption curve with, like, that being the storytelling paradigm forever. So I love, the example you just gave to kind of further illustrate, like, hey, let's make this a little more fun. Let's make this approachable. And yeah, it's still activism and it's still doing good, but it's fun and
Hmm.
approachable versus, like, we're going to war or something that's maybe a little more daunting.
Yeah. Yep.
Interesting segue, right? Being a Swiss manufactured chocolate has had many advantages. It sounds like historically, but I know there's a great deal of maybe adversity right now with the current tariffs. I want to say last time I checked, it's 39% for Swiss imported
Correct.
products. Um,
Correct.
which, knowing what I know about margin in this business, I can't imagine how you're going to not have to pass all of that, or at least a vast majority of it, on to some of your partners, down the supply chain. But
Hmm.
um, this I think is a really good opportunity for us to just have someone educate our audience on what's happening live with some of these tariff decisions. We haven't had a brand, I don't think, that's been as affected, or we haven't talked about it in depth. So, Keith, can you just take us through kind of the journey of what you've dealt with related to this topic and how that is really affecting the business right now from like a pure dollars and cents perspective?
Yeah. Well, as you said, you know, no CPG brand has that kind of margin to be
Yeah.
able to absorb even 15%.
Right.
Things coming out of the EU. I was on a call earlier today with a major retailer in the
Hmm.
Southeast, and they were saying that they're seeing significant supply chain disruptions because of the tariffs,
Hmm.
that manufacturers, brand owners like ourselves, are trying to find alternative supply chains to mitigate some of the tariffs.
Right.
So if you were buying materials from Vietnam, now it's 20% tariff. If you're buying materials from Brazil, it's 50% tariff. If you're buying materials from India, it's 50% tariff. Switzerland, 39%.
Mm.
But the EU is at
Gosh.
15%, and even 15%, there is no consumer packaged goods company in the world that has 15% cushion
Yeah.
to still be profitable.
Right.
We're lucky if at the end of the day we make 10%. And
Mhm.
that's really managing your
Yeah.
trade spend, managing your logistics, being efficient with your manufacturing. CPG companies typically, if they're hitting on all cylinders, are making 10%.
Hmm.
You can look at the publicly traded ones and see that
Right.
that's the way it works. So when the tariffs were announced in April, Switzerland got hit with 31%. Then, of course, it got backed off and it was 10%. Most people don't know it. Chocolate already had a tariff on it. Chocolate
Wow.
has been had, it wasn't called a tariff then, it was called a customs duty. So chocolate had 5.5% coming in from Switzerland
Oh, wow. It already had 5.5.
forever.
Wow. Okay.
So that 10% got laid on top of that 5.5.
Yeah.
Now that 5.5 was already baked into our cost of goods and everything because it's been there forever.
Yeah.
But now that 10% on top of it, and don't forget that cacao prices went from $3,800 to $12,800.
Ugh.
And so now you're looking at chocolate companies having to raise the price 30, 40, 50%, and we still aren't recovering everything that we're investing. So I was talking to a guy in the industry from one of the very, very large companies, and he said, people are going to have to get used to the fact that a chocolate bar is going to cost them $8 to $10.
Wow.
He said,
Wow.
because it's not going back. And that was before the 39% tariff.
Right.
That was just based on cacao pricing, based on global demand. He said, we had a hard time moving from $2 to $3.
Hmm.
But then over the last couple of years, it's gone from $3 to $5
Hmm.
for premium chocolates.
Hmm.
He said, now it's going from 5 to 7. And in the next 18 to 24 months, it's going to go to 10. And he said, and that's just going to be the reality of it.
Mm.
And so I sat there and I listened to that and I'm thinking, wow, you know, um, I guess consumers will determine because it's a discretionary buy.
Right.
They'll determine, or am I going to buy one every 2 weeks instead of one a week, and that's okay. I mean, I don't have an issue with it as long as we're all playing by the same rules. because I believe in the quality of our products. I believe in what we're doing from a global impact perspective. So that's okay. Even if we get smaller before we get bigger again, that's okay too.
Right.
But what's not okay is being penalized or being under a punitive trade barrier where now I'm not even, I can't be competitive with the other landscape
Mm-hmm.
because none of my other competitors are produced in Switzerland.
Yeah. Wow.
And I don't have the power in the marketplace. I mean, Alter Eco is a big brand, don't get me wrong,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't have the power in the marketplace of somebody like a Lint, for example,
Right.
who is ubiquitous for being the Swiss chocolate of the world.
Mm-hmm.
They can go out and do a 40% price increase.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's still going to carry Lint.
Right.
They have to. I do a 40% price increase. There's retailers that'll say, sorry,
Yeah.
I can't have you on the shelf because it's so premium priced. I can't afford it. Now, having said that, I don't, I always tell people never underestimate the value of your product.
Mm.
So if your product's really worth that, then
Yeah.
charge for it. Charge for it. If you're doing something that's so unique and has so much value baked into it, don't be afraid to charge for it.
Yeah.
And I can guarantee you, I can line up every one of our competitors. I can walk into Whole Foods and pick up every one of those chocolate brands and put them on the table. And I will stand Alter Eco up against any of them in
Mm.
terms of flavor, in terms of quality, and in terms of everything else that we do.
Mm-hmm.
There's nobody out there that has the certifications we do. There's nobody out there that has the commitment to doing the right thing that we do.
Mm-hmm.
My graphic designer told me we can't get any more certifications. I said, why? She's like, I got no place to put them on the package.
Yeah. Yeah. What
So
what have some of those conversations with retailers been like? I assume they're empathetic, but to a point, right? And
that's exactly right.
are you
They're
like,
empathetic to a point. I mean, when the 10% tariff hit, a lot of us, not just Alter Eco, but a lot of us went to the retailers and said, we need to have a 10% price increase
yeah,
right now. They're like, well, no, you got to follow the standards. We need 90-day notice period before you can do a price increase. It's like, well, we didn't get 90 days,
right. Mm,
you know, and the 39% tariff went into effect August 7th. I didn't get 90 days.
yeah.
I
And it's
can't.
August 12th right now for people listening to the episode. So
Yeah.
dealing with this
So,
right now.
yeah, in real time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was on the phone with my Swiss partners this morning. We talk every couple of days now trying to figure out ways to mitigate it.
Mm-hmm.
I might be able to mitigate 10%. I can't mitigate 40.
Yeah. I think
So
something,
honestly, I don't know what we're going to do if it stays.
yeah. Well, let's hope it doesn't, one. And two, you know, we've spent some time actually talking about how you can implement the changes that would relate to that type of an increase. But I also think there's this whole other category of stuff that's almost impossible to quantify, which I would just call like overall tariff disruption that has to do with
Mhm.
the amount of bandwidth you and your team are spending on preparing from a
Oh,
speculative capacity and now also like
mhm.
handling the fallout and then also handling if it does get repealed or if it gets changed. Can you try and like articulate that or quantify that for the audience so they understand like how disruptive has this truly been for the business?
Oh, tremendously. The uncertainty is the biggest issue.
Right.
You know, obviously, I don't want a 39% tariff to stick.
Yeah.
But if I knew that it was going to,
Mm-hmm.
then I would be developing alternative plans, maybe moving my manufacturing, which I hate to even think about doing.
Yeah. Right.
But if I go to all that trouble and you can't even imagine the amount of work that it is to even start to plan that.
Right. Right.
And then all of a sudden the tariffs are repealed and it's back down to 10% or 15% or, who
Mhm.
knows? Then, and it's not just me, it's disrupting the entire industry
Right.
because I can't make those plans on my own. I've got to go out and talk to other chocolate manufacturers. I've got to
Mhm.
talk to people in Canada. I got to talk to people in the US. I got to talk to people in Italy. I got to talk to people in France and Belgium. And I'm pulling their resources and their time to say, "Oh yeah, we would love to." And don't get me wrong, all of them would love to produce for Alter Eco.
Yeah. Right.
They know the brand, they know the brand loyalty and the brand equity that we have, and they would love to be a partner with us. But it takes a lot of work for them to gear up to think about doing that.
Mhm.
Our flavor profiles are unique. Our relationships with our farmers, transitioning them to go to a different manufacturer. And
Right.
I mean, it disrupts the entire supply chain. I spend probably 30% of my time on this right now.
Oof. I,
So
I I feel like I should know more than I know about this topic, but one simple fix that maybe is naive and incorrect. So you as someone who knows more, feel free to chime in. Why are we not exempting products that we cannot source domestically? Like, why are we allowing this to
that
be affecting coffee and chocolate and things that like we will never grow here at any
I know,
scale to satisfy
I
the
know,
American consumer?
I know. That's the question that all of us have.
Yeah.
And God bless Hershey's because they're big enough that they're lobbying. They
Yeah.
have lobbyists in Washington saying, "How can you tariff cacao? Show me a cacao plant in the United States.
Right.
How can you tariff coffee? How can you tariff tea? None of these things grow in the US.
Hmm.
Coconuts, you know?
Hmm.
I mean, there's certain things that just, yeah, okay, a little bit in Hawaii. They can't
Hmm.
even satisfy their own demand.
Right.
It's so small. I mean, yeah, we get Kona coffee into the United States, and that's the biggest export out of Hawaii.
Hmm.
But they couldn't grow enough cacao to satisfy even my demand, much less
Right.
Hershey's and Mars and Nestle and Mondelez and all the big guys. There's no way.
Yeah.
I mean, we consume as a and the United States consumes more chocolate and coffee per capita than anybody else in the world except for a
Yeah.
couple of small pockets in Europe.
Yeah. We like our coffee and chocolate over here. That is for sure.
We do, and there's no to your point, there's no way we can bring those industries into the United States.
Hmm.
It's physically not possible.
Hmm.
So,
I I want to maybe wrap the tariff thing, and I appreciate you sharing so transparently and vulnerably, especially as you're literally dealing with this in real time as we speak. So just thank you. Um, the last question to maybe just give even more of an idea to the audience of how significant this issue is. In your career, have you dealt with anything similar from how disruptive it's been? Maybe COVID, or maybe like, can you think of anything that's been as disruptive as this has been to what you're dealing with?
COVID was interesting for sure. I happened to be running a company called American Botanicals during
Mm.
COVID,
Mhm.
and we supplied a lot of the nutraceutical companies with medicinal mushrooms and echinacea and red beet root powder. So our sales went off the
I was about to say, so it's
charts.
probably a good time for you.
It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Getting the product in
Yeah.
and getting it processed was difficult,
Yeah.
but we were also designated as an essential employer,
Yeah.
and so we never shut down. And so it was business boomed that year, you
Mhm.
know. Um, but having said that, it was very disruptive from a logistics perspective. Of course, logistics went sky high during COVID. Ports couldn't process. They didn't have workers. Things were backing up in docks and things of
Yeah.
that nature. but I've never dealt with something that had the level of uncertainty that we
Right.
have now. And I mentioned that, I used that term earlier. If the devil is something that you can plan against.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's the one you don't know.
Hmm.
And I can honestly tell you when the EU settled on 15%, I started planning for 15% because I had in my mind that Switzerland, it's they're independent, but they follow most of the things that the EU follows, and they've even over the years contemplated becoming part of the EU, but you know, and I just kind of started the mental process of planning around 15%. And then it's announced at 39%. I'm like, what did the Swiss ever do to anybody?
Mm.
I mean, and I get the fact that there's a lot of exports that come out of Switzerland into the US, and there's a trade imbalance. But Switzerland's a country of 9 million people.
Right.
One of the journalists in Switzerland said something that I thought was the most humorous of the whole situation. He said, everybody in Switzerland could drink a bottle of Jack Daniels a day and buy a Harley Davidson, and we would still have a deficit.
Wow. 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 Do you know what the other big things that are coming in from Switzerland are by chance?
Yeah, I mean, Switzerland's a very prosperous and productive country for sure.
Yeah.
So pharmaceuticals are number one,
Okay.
gold bullion, believe it
Wow.
or not,
Yeah.
flavors and fragrances.
Okay.
The largest flavor company in the world is Swiss,
Huh. Okay.
but they produce a lot in the U.S. They have their largest, outside of Switzerland, their largest manufacturing facilities in the United States.
Okay.
Um, chocolate and watches,
Hmm. Yeah.
dairy,
Watches. Hmm.
dairy, Swiss cheese, Emmentaler cheese, Gruyere. I mean, there's a lot of cheeses that come out of Switzerland,
Hmm.
but you know, we don't we don't make those things anywhere else.
Right. Right.
You know, and they don't import a lot from the United States
Hmm.
because they're landlocked. They're surrounded by major manufacturing countries like Germany and Italy and France and Turkey, and you know, they don't. Again, they're a country of 9 million people.
Yeah.
So,
The
I
Jack
mean, New
Daniels Harley
York City
Davidson
has
thing is
more.
crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah. I
That
mean,
puts it into perspective.
he picked out the 2 most iconic, US brands that are
Yeah.
only manufactured in the US, and he's like, "We could all drink a bottle every day and buy
Hmm.
a Harley Davidson, and there would still be a major deficit."
Yeah. Well, you were telling me before we started recording that they're saying Roger Federer might get involved in the negotiations.
That was on MSN this morning. That was on MSN this morning. Roger came out and volunteered to, be helpful in any way he could.
Well, for your sake and many others, hopefully he gets involved and has a positive effect. But yeah, like I've already said a couple of times, just I appreciate you sharing all this with us and educating us and educating me. It certainly is an extremely difficult thing to deal with for your business, and taking an hour out of your time to talk to us about your business overall, but also this topic. I'm sure you can put other places. So just appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, and I feel for all the other brands that are dealing with it, even if they're not dealing with 39%, they're dealing with 15 or 20. I was
Hmm.
talking to a coffee company, a friend of mine that owns a coffee company, and all of her coffee comes from Vietnam, and that's 20%. Talking with another friend of mine that owns a coffee company, and she's getting coffee out of Brazil.
Hmm.
It's like these things aren't sustainable, and ultimately, the consumer's going to pay the price.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's where it's going.
Yeah. And that's a good segue into something I want to get your take on. You've been in business for quite some time. You've worked for other very prominent, successful CPG brands. You've been in food for quite a while. Um, what do you think is the future of this regenerative thing when it comes to being a consumer claim for
Mhm.
brands, about their businesses or about specific products? Like, do you think we're headed to a centralized one symbol USDA organic type approach that eventually has the type of market resonance that label does? Do you think we're never going to get there and it's never going to be whatever? Like, what do you see 10, 20, 15 years down the road for this whole regen thing?
I think we'll get to one certifying body like USDA
Mm,
Organic
mm,
or Fair Trade. I mean, we
mhm.
went through iterations with Fair Trade too.
Yeah, right.
I mean, a number of different iterations and certifying bodies, but it eventually harmonized. I
Mhm.
think we'll eventually harmonize. I won't be running a company when we do. I don't plan to work that long because
Yeah.
it'll take 15 to 20 years probably, but I think we have to. I think
Mhm,
we have to get to some harmonization in that aspect. And, it's it's entities like Kiss the Ground and Rock and yourself
mhm.
that are going to drive this movement toward a harmonization because the brands, we can't do it.
Yeah.
We can't do it. It's going to have to be all the the voices that are making the noise to the consumer
Mhm,
and educating the consumer. I can't afford I ran a company a number of years ago that had a
mhm,
fabulous product out of South Africa that had more anti-inflammatory benefits than anything else on the market.
mhm,
But the US consumer had never heard of it,
mm.
didn't understand what it was. And no matter how much scientific studies and Brunswick lab reports showing where it sat on the ORAC scale, it was an educational sale. And it was so expensive to educate the consumer. As a brand, we couldn't do it.
Yeah.
It takes a voice bigger than the brands to
Yep.
be able to do it. And you're seeing some big brands start to embrace it. And when the bigger brands embrace it, then the voice gets louder.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, we're continuing to evolve how we are showing up in that effort. I mean, we do the most like tactical work there for with the trade association with the coalition, and then also there's some stuff we do through the institute, which is the nonprofit that does the podcast and the other work. And it's going to take all of us, like you said. It's
Mhm.
going to take a lot more of a unified, harmonious kind of narrative and approach. Um,
Yep.
and I also think because it's much more of a transition type vehicle versus like a hard and set consumer claim. We
Mhm.
need the retailers to take more of an advocacy transition approach
Mhm.
also and be very helpful in being the vehicle that interacts with a lot of the eyeballs and not
Yep.
just from an assortment perspective. Yes, a lot of them are prioritizing regenerative brands and SKUs to get on shelf and promote them or spotlight them in marketing, but we also have to do some even more like tactical awareness and education with all those eyeballs that are in stores every day because that's the
Mhm.
easiest it's the easiest place to reach them.
For sure. For sure. I mean, I will say, if you look at things like conferences and things of that nature, there's so many more of them now, and there's a lot more attendees. I mean, I'm speaking at 2 coming up this fall. I'm speaking at
Mhm.
the Reuters event
Mm.
in Minneapolis, which is called Transform Ag, and it's all
Mm.
about regenerative, and then I'm actually speaking at Supply Side West in
Nice.
October. And
Nice.
so those are things where the audiences are getting bigger. The mouthpieces like me are getting more opportunity to get in front of the audiences. And so, it's a movement, but
Mhm.
it's a long ways coming before it harmonizes and where the consumer
Mhm.
then recognizes it the same way they do the USDA symbol, for example.
Yeah.
And we have to
100%.
be very careful. We have to be very careful about greenwashing
Yeah.
because it's happening,
Yeah.
and there's no traceability on some of these things. How do you prove it one way or another?
Mhm.
How many brands produce a regen report like we do that shows our receipts?
Right. Right.
So,
Yeah. 100%. And it really feels like the groundswell and the momentum is really there in trade, in the industry, right? Like if you work in the space, you've at least heard of the term and hopefully you kind of have a general idea of what it is, but reaching that same level of resonance with the consumer is a totally different task. And like I said earlier, it's almost like a different approach that takes kind of a different messaging style and different tactics. So we'll continue to all lock arms and chip away at that. And I'm sure maybe solving for that is part of the answer to our final question that we ask everybody, but I'll turn it over to you to just share your overall thoughts. How do we get ReGen brands to have 50% market share by 2050? What we got to do to make that happen?
By 2050. That's that. I mean, that's a long ways off, but yet at the same time, it's not. I think it does take institutional support and harmonized certifications, really defining the definition. I was on a podcast a couple of weeks ago and I said something about regenerative farming in the cacao industry is very different than regenerative farming in oats or rice or, annual crops.
Right.
And the podcaster said, well, I don't consider that regenerative farming. And I said, but it is. And she's like, well, not really. It's improving soil health if they do cover crops and rotations, but I don't really think of that as regenerative. I said, but we have to.
Right.
We have to think that we can't just focus on those crops like bananas and cacao and things that are going to be climate control regenerative.
Yeah.
Because we have to think about soil health and micronutrients and reduction on dependency on chemical fertilizers and all those things, because that's regenerative too. And she's like, wow, I think I need to broaden my definition of regenerative. So, but I think it's going to take, and I wouldn't say that it's going to take government interaction.
Yeah.
But it's going to take governmental support. So I don't know exactly what that looks like, but I mean, if you look at farming, I mean, farming subsidies and whatnot have been around for over 100 years.
Right.
So subsidizing those that are focused on regenerative could really make the movement go faster at a farming level.
Yeah. Yeah. More harmony to catalyze more support within the industry and more kind of harmony and efficiency so that institutional policy, government, et cetera, support can show up and play its role. Yep. Agreed. Hey, man, thank you so much for joining us. This has been super informative, very fun. Like I said, appreciate you joining us, especially during this time and all that you're dealing with. And just appreciate the legacy work that Alter Eco has done to lead in this regard, and also your remaining commitment as kind of the new steward of the brand. So just thank you for all of that and what you continue to do and spending some time with us.
You're very welcome. Enjoyed it.
For transcripts, show notes, and more information on this episode, check out our website, regen-brands.com. That is regen-brands.com. You can also check out our YouTube channel, ReGen Brands, for all of our episodes with both video and audio. The best way to support our work is to give us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform and subscribe to future episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. You can also subscribe to our newsletter, the ReGen Brands Weekly, and follow our ReGen Brands LinkedIn page to stay in the know on all the latest news, insights, and perspectives from the world of regenerative CPG. Thanks so much for tuning into the ReGen Brands podcast. We hope you learned something new in this episode and it empowers you to use your voice, your time, your talent, and your dollars to help us build a better and more regenerative food system. Love you guys.